Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. This show is designed to highlight the work of philanthropic leaders here in the United States and then beyond. Today with us, Brenda Simmons. And Brenda is the founder and executive director of the Southampton African-American Museum, located in Southampton, New York. Let's all welcome Brenda Simmons.
Hi, my name is Brenda Simmons. I am the founder and executive director of the Southampton African-American Museum, and this spot is the first African-American site to be historically designated in the village of Southampton, and it's the first Black barbershop to be transformed into a museum in the country. So this weekend is the weekend of Memorial Day weekend. We had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful exhibition. It's a must-see. Matter of fact, in the Curious magazine, it was listed on the must-see exhibitions for the weekend. This exhibition is up now, up until July 8th. I'll see you there.
I'd like to start first with asking you a little bit about the history of the Southampton African-American Museum.
The Southampton African-American Museum was originally a barber shop, and Emanuel Seymour came to Southampton in the late 40s through the Great Migration, and he purchased that property. He built a building, half barbershop and half a beauty parlor, and my auntie was the beautician there. And then when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I used to go there and answer the phones for my auntie. And I was so excited. It's actually the first African-American site to be historically designated in the village of Southampton. And it's the first Black barbershop to be transformed into a museum in the country. And you know, I think about Emanuel Seymour coming through the Great Migration and purchasing this property and building this building during that time. And also fast forward, Emanuel Seymour ended up selling the barbershop to Randy Conquest. And Randy Conquest, he began to be like such an icon in the community because he began to really encourage young people about education, about jobs. And it was like a community center. And he was so instrumental in actually training 3 young men to get their barber license. And to this day, 2 of them have their own barbershops. So it was a 16-year labor of love, to be honest. But in Juneteenth 2021, was our opening. And it just so happened to be the same weekend that Juneteenth was made a holiday.
Very interesting. Now, why did it take 16 years to get the museum together and then a reality?
You know, the thing that I'll answer that question is, you know, I had a compassion to do this, but I really didn't have the know-how. So the National Trust Organization had these programs that I could join, and they actually had a lot of scholarships. And I went through, I don't know how many different states, and I did a lot of training. And also, the other thing that took so long was getting the 501c3. That wasn't an easy task. It wasn't an easy task at all. And then moving forward, as the process goes, you get a contractor, and we got the contractor. And unfortunately, the contractor was a little challenging. I'll just say that. And they had to get rid of him. So we had to go through the whole process again and doing the whole bidding again and get another contractor. And then during that time, it was the COVID situation happening. So as we know, there was restrictions about building anything. There were restrictions you couldn't build. So after that restrictions was lifted, we thought we was going to go forward, and the whole construction company had COVID. It's like you can't make this up, right? So anyway, moving forward, we were able to finally open the museum, and it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. And I also want to make sure I mention CMX Sammy. CMX Sammy was the architect of this beautiful, beautiful building. And I'm hoping that all who are listening will come by and visit.
Yes, it is a beautiful gem of a building in Southampton with enormous history for many people living in Southampton and the surrounding community. Now, Brenda, you were working in government at the time, and can you speak a little bit about that and how you mentioned to me once before that Southampton, the town of Southampton, was very supportive of the museum. And I think it's important for those listening and watching to know that.
Yes, I have to say the town has been very, very instrumental and very supportive. How what's happened was Randy Conquest, after many years of being a barber, he decided to give it up. And so the town Community Preservation Fund purchased the building. And the building is on village property. So the village and the town has an agreement, and we are the organization who run it. So yes, the town was very, very instrumental in purchasing that property for us and to really make this happen.
I'm glad to hear. And as someone living in Southampton, a village that I love and I love to support, it's nice to see that the village is behind the Southampton African-American Museum, as many of the people are. Now, Brenda, you mentioned that you grew up in Southampton, and you also mentioned that there were some challenging times as a young teenager there. And I think it's important for people to hear the stories and never to forget the history of what it might have been like living as a woman of color in Southampton.
You know, first I'm going to mention something that I am of age at this moment, but it's something that happened to me that I experienced. First of all, I want to mention when I was about probably like 5 or 7 years old, and I was watching television and sitting on the floor eating my cereal, watching cartoons. I think it was Bugs Bunny, and all of a sudden the TV flashed, and what I saw when I looked up was policemen beating people that looked like me. And I never forget, I was so frightened and I didn't understand it. And a cop, policeman had came in our classroom, said they're going to support us and, protect us. So that was a little scary for me, because I guess at that time, because of my age, I was frightened that those people looked like me. They had water hoses, they had dogs, and people were being thrown against the walls and across the streets. And I never forget, I was so frightened. I thought maybe this might happen to me. But the other thing other experience I did was one I had when I was in high school. And, my parents came from the South, from Jim Crow. So I think that was the purpose or the reason why they kept telling us we couldn't go down Joe's Lane. And I couldn't understand it, but, as a young child, being obedient, we just listened to mom. We didn't understand why. But one evening, as young teenagers do, we decide to venture down Job's Lane. And as venturing down Job's Lane, I saw all these wonderful people in mannequins in the windows. And so I was saying, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? But I get to the end of Job's Lane, those who know the area, and I went to make the left to go down Main Street, and a gentleman was coming from South Main Street, and he said, "What are you N-words doing here?" And at that moment, I realized that's why mom didn't want us to go down. She was protecting us. She was protecting us. But it was really an eye-opener for me as a young girl. At this point, it was in the 70s. But yeah, that was an experience I had that I won't soon forget.
Those are terrible experiences for anyone to have, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That should have never happened. And I'm glad now that we've come a long way, and because the history of this country as it relates to people of color, slavery being a great stain on the souls of this country, it's not a good history. So I'm so happy, and I think we're all happy to see that discrimination towards people of color has really more or less dried up. It doesn't exist anymore. In isolated cases, it does, but in most cases, no. And I'm very sorry you as a young child had to, number one, see that on television, and number two, experience discrimination yourself. Moving back to the museum, Brenda, tell us a little bit about some of the activities going on at the museum. I've heard you have wonderful educational programs and a lot of exciting things coming up.
Yes, I want to also say that we got a $125,000 digital tapestry grant, and that's augmented virtual reality. And that's really a highlight, one of the highlights of when you come and visit the museum, because the actual, like Pierce Conter, who's a former slave here in Southampton, born March 17th, 1814, he actually comes alive and tells about his story. And we've had, over the winter, we had a Black history program, which was awesome. And what we did was we scheduled school trips. So we had like 4 or 5 school trips that came in, which was really, 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 really great. And in between that, Newsday TV contacted me and said they want to come in to interview me and come to the museum. So I cleverly scheduled the Southampton Elementary School to come the same time. So you literally can go on Newsday TV and see this wonderful, wonderful video filmed in the Southampton African-American Museum. And I think really what was so endearing to me is she interviewed a couple of young kids that the things that they shared was just so, heartfelt, out of the mouths of children, these things come out. And anyway, they were saying how wonderful it was that they visited there. And, this was a 16-year labor of love, but I was determined, as we're talking, I was really determined to make this happen because, to leave a legacy in the community, that the history that we've had in the United States, it was very important to make sure we leave that legacy there. The other program that we also launched over the winter was a Black history program called Hampton's Civil Rights Story. It's a cell phone tour that you can take in the Hamptons. And that was actually launched over the winter as well. And just this past week, we had our grand opening, well, not a grand opening, but our opening for the season, which was last Friday. And the next day, we had our first art exhibition reception opening. And it was absolutely wonderful. And that will be running until July 8th. So again, please come and visit us. The next program we'll have is Juneteenth celebration. Our annual Juneteenth celebration is Saturday, June 15th. And we're going to have a wonderful, wonderful gentleman from Africa that's going to play the koba. The koba is an instrument that is actually made in Africa. And it's just a wonderful, beautiful sound. It's kind of the mixture of a guitar and a violin at the same time. And also that day, I'm so happy. There's a young lady in the community. Her name is Tavia Jeffries. She wrote a book called Dear Son. And I'm going to have a fire chat with her about her book. And it's just going to be a wonderful, and generally the whole time we always have a Juneteenth barbecue. So Juneteenth style barbecue was also going to be happening that day as well. So also after that, we will have a collaboration with the Southampton Art Center and Art Soul Hamptons. That's going to be July 19th and the 20th. And all I keep saying is going to be epic. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to be epic. And then July 25th will be our annual Founders Circle fundraiser, who Jean is very instrumental. She's the chairperson of that. And I'm telling you, she's been so supportive. And that's going to be July 25th at the Southampton Inn. And we will be looking forward to putting that information on ticket sales on the website.
Brenda Simmons, I'm just amazed at all you have done. And for the community, you are leaving a great legacy, doing so many wonderful things, so many educational opportunities at the Southampton African-American Museum, and then a lot of different programs for people who want to get to know the museum a little bit better, get to know its players. And of course, you have to do a fundraiser, which is very, very important.
Absolutely.
Yes, for our audience, we are with Brenda Simmons, and she is the founder and executive director of the Southampton African-American Museum, located in Southampton, New York. Brenda, going back to a little bit about you, you work very hard. I remember speaking to you last year, and during season when you're doing tours of the museum and everything else imaginable, I said to myself, well, how does this woman do it? And all I could think of was it must be a labor of love. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, when you have the heart, I think being born and raised here too, that has a lot to do with it as well. And I've been very involved with the community, and again, I said before, I want to leave a legacy. And the other thing I want to add too, we're also collaborating with Eastville in Sag Harbor and Montauk Society. We're actually doing our second annual Amistad celebration. And that's going to be August 22nd to the 26th. And the actual ship is coming in. So if you get a chance, you have to come down. It's going to be a wonderful event. But again, as you said, Jean, it's, I've come to a conclusion that I think is an assignment that has been given to me. When you have an assignment, I guess you get that energy and that never giving up kind of energy that that kicks in, that you just don't give up. So I'm just very happy to be a leave this legacy for my community. And that I always want to say it's for everybody. All are welcome.
Well, it's wonderful. And I know we'll be reading about you in all the history books for many, many generations to come. And I want to thank you for this. Now, since you need to raise money for the museum and it's vitally important for your existence, we should talk a little bit more about the fundraiser. As a co-chair, along with Aisha Christian, a wonderful woman, an attorney living in the Hamptons, I must say that it's been a fabulous event every year. Tickets are reasonably priced, and I encourage everyone watching this show, well, come out to the fundraiser. And if you can't make it, maybe you'll make a donation, because the only way a museum can survive is through the donations of the people that live in a community. The museum is charming. It's very small. It's like a gem in the midst of a big sea. And we can thank Brenda Simmons and her team for putting this little museum in the Hamptons and contributing to the history and culture of not only Southampton, but the entire eastern end of Long Island.
Yes, yes.
Brenda, we have a few more minutes left. And one of the things I like to ask is about advising young people. You are a person who is a deal maker, a change maker. What advice do you give to a young person who wants to follow in your footsteps? Maybe they want to start their own museum. Maybe they want to start a business. Maybe they just want to succeed in life. What advice do you give to them?
That's a loaded question. I've been asked that question before. And the only thing I can really say is I had used to really be a family development worker. And I used to be a family development worker for parents with their children. And I used to say, from my example, is you have to pay attention to your child. And if you see they have an interest in something, you should really explore it. Give them more information, give them, put them in that environment and stuff. So the thing that I would say is if you have a goal, if you have something that you feel like you want to try, give it a shot. Give it a shot. And the thing I always say, that the world is waiting for you. That's what I've always said. You have this gift that no one else has, and the world is waiting for you.
I love that. And what you're really saying is, if you have a dream, follow that dream.
Yes.
You have to work hard, live an honest life, and also be a nice person, because that's going to make a difference. Brenda, for those that want to get involved with the Southampton African-American Museum, or maybe want to donate, what is the website?
The website is www.saamuseum.org. I'll say it one more time, www.saaamuseum.org. And we're located at 245 North Sea Road in Southampton, New York. I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Brenda Simmons. This concludes Successful Philanthropy. Our guest today, Brenda Simmons. Brenda is the Executive Director and founder of the Southampton African-American Museum. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host. I'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.